Dear Hollywood, my old friend, I'm sending you this message as a final cry. I'm angry enough to skip the sugarcoating and tell you straight. I'm utterly disappointed in you. Hear me out, because it seems like everyone around you keeps clapping like cowardly yes men, telling you you're brilliant, that your every move is strategic and brand safe. But you and I both know that's nonsense. Look at yourself. Really look. If there's still a soul in there, you'll feel the shame. Because you're not thriving. You're hiding. And everyone pretending otherwise is just helping you rot. I remember the version of you that mattered. The Hollywood of the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. The decades when you were bold, wild, inventive, and alive. And because I remember that version of you so clearly, it's painful to watch what you've become. But what infuriates me most is how blind you are to your own decay. You used to lead culture. Now you chase it like a desperate imitator. Somewhere along the way, you stopped making art and started manufacturing souvenirs of past success. You act shocked when audiences roll their eyes. But what do you expect when you serve up warmed-over leftovers and call it a feast? You lost your hunger, Hollywood, and the world can smell it. Let's be honest, you're sick, and the illness is repetition. You keep making reboots, sequels, prequels, spin-offs, and so-called reimaginings. You cling to brand names the way someone clings to a life raft. You've convinced yourself that you're giving the audience what they want, but you're really just choosing the safest option you can justify to shareholders. That's not a creative vision. That's fear dressed up as strategy. Think about who you used to be. In the 70s, you took wild risks. Star Wars, The Godfather, Taxi Driver, Jaws, Alien. These movies weren't based on familiar brands. They became brands because you had the guts to try something new. In the 90s, you launched The Matrix, Pulp Fiction, Toy Story, Fight Club, and The Sixth Sense, all originals. Even your mid-budget dramas and thrillers were iconic. Erin Brockovich, Jerry Maguire, Heat, Good Will Hunting. None of these came from a franchise machine. Now look at yourself. You've fallen so far it's almost pathetic. Back in 1984, original screenplays made up 73% of the domestic box office. You were bursting with new ideas, new voices, new risks. Fast forward to 2023, and that number has collapsed to just 30%. That's not evolution, that's creative atrophy. And when you look at your so-called biggest hits, more than 80% of them come from pre-existing intellectual property. In 2024, it got even worse. 100% of the top 10, that's right, all 10 out of 10 were based on existing IP. Even your original hits, the few you still produce, explode only when they slip through your system almost by accident. Everything Everywhere All at Once, made for around $25 million, won Best Picture and became A24's highest-grossing film ever. Get Out, made for $4.5 million, pulled in over $250 million worldwide. Barbie, which everyone likes to call existing intellectual property, but was essentially treated as an original film with a subversive voice, made $1.5 billion because it had a real point of view. Oppenheimer, a 3-hour R-rated adult historical drama, made almost $1 billion, more than most of your superhero movies. The evidence is right in front of you. Audiences aren't tired of movies. They're tired of you playing it safe. Your decision-making process now looks less like storytelling and more like a broken spreadsheet. You abandoned mid-budget films, the ones that used to shape culture, because they didn't promise opening weekend explosions. You let streaming convince you to treat movies like content, not cinema. You shelved completed films to take tax write-offs. You used to fight for auteurs. Now you fight for algorithm-friendly runtimes. And beneath all this behavior is one thing you refuse to admit. You are terrified. Terrified of missing the next trend. terrified of making something that doesn't instantly go viral, terrified of taking a chance that might embarrass you. You've gotten so scared of failure that you've become allergic to originality. But here's the thing, your biggest disasters lately weren't original films. They were sequels and reboots you assumed were safe. The Flash, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Quantum Mania, Ghostbusters Afterlife, underperforming. The Marvels, Transformers Rise of the Beasts, Shazam 2, Furiosa, and dozens more. Meanwhile, your few originals outperform expectations almost every time they're given half a chance. Look at Smile from 2022. Made for $17 million, it brought in more than $200 million. Look at John Wick from 2014. Original, mid-budget, became a billion-dollar franchise. Risk didn't kill you. Playing safe did. You need to find yourself again, Hollywood. And that starts with cutting the cord that ties you to the past. You don't need to ban sequels outright. Some are worth making, but you need to stop leaning on them like a crutch. You also have to bring back those medium-sized movies. The ones between $20 and $60 million used to be your heart. That's where filmmakers learned, experimented, failed, succeeded, and created the next generation of classics. Abandoning them was like starving your own future. You also have to give power back to real storytellers, not a committee, not 20 executives giving 30 conflicting notes. Let a director rise or fall by their own vision. Scorsese, Spielberg, Cameron, Fincher, Tarantino, none of them would survive your current system. You would smother their movies in development before they reached the camera test. You've also cluttered your schedule with too many projects. You greenlight shallow ideas because you're afraid of missing the next hit, but you end up crowding out the ones that actually matter. You've stuffed your release calendar with so much noise that audiences have stopped listening. And let's talk about these cinematic universes you keep forcing. You are not a religion. You don't need canon. You don't need every story to connect. You need good films, individual films that matter on their own terms. When Marvel began, the movies stood alone. The universe came later. You're trying to reverse engineer magic. Most importantly, stop assuming audiences don't want something unless it's been done before. That's your excuse, not the truth. In the past decade, the films that actually shifted culture did it because they were bold, not because they hid behind nostalgia. Parasite had no franchise, no built-in fan base, and it still became a global earthquake. Everything Everywhere All at Once came out of nowhere and swept the Oscars. Even when IP was involved, it was the reinvention, not the brand, that mattered. Mad Max Fury Road didn't succeed because people were dying for a sequel to a 30-year-old series. It succeeded because George Miller ignored your rules and made something insane, original, and alive. Joker didn't make $1 billion because it was tied to Batman. It made $1 billion because it dared to be a grim, uncomfortable character study you never would have greenlit on your own. And Tenet, a dense, original blockbuster released in the middle of a pandemic, still pulled in hundreds of millions because audiences were starving for something that wasn't a copy of a copy. Every time people get excited, it's when you stop trying to please everyone and finally take a risk. You used to be a pioneer. Now you act like a museum curator who's terrified to open a new wing. But here's why I'm sending you this message. I still believe you're not beyond saving. You're wounded, not dead. The passion that made you great is still there. You've just buried it under analytics and brand management. If you can admit that nostalgia is a short-term crutch, not a long-term plan, if you can start trusting your filmmakers again, if you can start making movies for humans instead of algorithms, then you can still be great. But if you keep pretending everything is fine, if you keep recycling the past instead of creating the future, then the audience will leave you behind completely. And once they're gone, no amount of reboots will bring them back. I'm saying this because I care about you, and because I remember who you really are, and I want to see that version of you again, the one that wasn't afraid to take a chance. It's time to wake up, Hollywood! And with that, I'll leave you with one last hope and a sincere wish that you find your way back. Your brutally honest old friend, Box Office Joe. Dear viewer, if you agree with my message, give it a thumbs up and a share. Who knows? Maybe it'll reach the people sitting at the high table calling the shots.